Okay, everybody say we're on Yud Gimel Aleph. We're at the two dots. 5 lines down. Kayotze lo yachal hazav. So the Mishnah said the same way you can't use the light to look at the what's it called to read with, and you can't use it to delouse, right? So it's a kayotze lo yachal hazav. So similarly, you not eat together a zav with a zava. So it's another precaution, basically. A zav is a man who is tamei, and a zava is a woman who is tamei, and they not allowed to sit and eat together. Tanya was told in the Braita. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Bo ur'eh ad heichan parza tahara b'Yisrael. Come on, see how widespread the observance of eating chulin b'tahara, eating regular food b'tahara, is in Klal Yisrael. Shelo shaninu. But we did not learn the Mishnah. Lo yachal haTorah matameah. We didn't say a tahar person should not eat with a tameah person because that is already understood. Because that is the way they practice. That a tahar person would never eat with a tameah person because they ate chulin b'tahara. And if you're tameh, you're going to touch the food. Everything's going to become tameh. Ela lo yachal hazav im hazava mipnei regel aveda. So the statement here is, even if they're both tamei, they shouldn't eat together because not because of the tuma of the food becoming tamei, but rather because of the possibility that a man and a woman, a man and his wife, even though they're both tamei, they might come to have relations if they're eating together, of course, without a heker, without a something reminding them that they're both in this state. And which is even more interesting is that a man when he's a zav and a woman when she's a zava, well, a man definitely when he's a zav, it's a gonorrhea and it's a very painful to have relations at that time. And still, one has to be careful. Nepnei regel aveda. Kayotze says the Gemara. Similarly, lo yachal zav parush im zav am haaretz. A parush is a religious man. He should not eat, even though he's a zav and he's tameh, he should not eat with a tameh person who is an amarad. Shema yargilenu etzloi, because maybe he become too close and too frequent with him. V'chi marigilo etzlo ma'ahavi, and what would be the big deal if he comes frequent next to him? Eila ema shema yachilenu devarim temein, maybe he's going to get tameh food for him. Altu zav parush lad varim temein achel. What's the big deal? Right now, the Zav is, even though he's a religious guy, he's Parush. However, right now he's Tameh. Everything he touches is Tameh. He's a Zav now. So, the issue is maybe the Amoritz is not giving off Maaser as he's supposed to. And as such, the food is not 100%. So maybe that's why we don't want him to sit and eat with the Zav. But Rav Amar, no, Rav Amoritz Maaserin him. Most of the Amaratzim, they give Maaser, so that's not a reason. What's the reason? Shema Yerogel Etzlai. Perhaps this means that the Porush will go constantly with this guy, with the Amoritz. Now he got so used to visiting this Amoritz, even when he's Tahar, he's going to be sitting with the Amoritz, and then he's going to end up eating Tamadike food because Amoritz is Tameh. So we don't want the Tamadike Zav, who is a Parush, a religious man, to sit with and eat with a Ama'aretz who's a Zav, even though right now both of them are eating Tomei, but because if they come accustomed to each other, later on the Parush would come and eat with him when he's Tahar and end up eating Tamadika food because Ama'aretz is Tomei. Okay, now comes really the main sugya for today, and a lot of halachos of the nida and the harchakos, the stuff that we do to distance and to ensure that we don't come to Chas V'Shalom, be boil anida, comes from this Gemara. So let us begin. They asked the question, nida mahu shetishan im ba'ala hi bivigda vehu bivigda. Okay, so we know that if a man is with a nida, he is chayev karet, right? With meaning he actually does the maaseh biyah. Okay, he does the act. So he's chayev karet. Here the question is, she's in a nida. He's dressed head to toe. She's dressed head to toe, and they want to just sleep together on the bed, not doing any action. But they both want to be nida. Masha tishon imbalo. Can't you sleep with your husband? He's in his clothing and she's in her clothing. Is that permissible? So Amar Rav Yosef, Tashma. Ha'oif oila magvina ala shulchan. You can put chicken and cheese on the table, but you cannot eat it. These are the words of Beit Shammai. You cannot bring it up. You cannot put them both on the table, and you cannot eat it. And Allah is like Bet Hillel, that you cannot put chicken and cheese on the same table, the eating table. You cannot do that. So same thing. A couple should not share the same bed if the wife isn't either. Just like the chicken and cheese can be eaten, so they shouldn't be on the same table. Same thing. Husband and wife who can cheese and neither should not be on the same bed. Shani Hasa. The Gemara says you cannot compare it. Deleka de'ot. Well, guess what? Cheese and chicken doesn't have consciousness. They cannot tell you, hey, don't mix us. But people have consciousness. And if the husband forgets, the wife can remind him. If the wife forgets, the husband can remind him. So it cannot be comparable because there are minds, there are consciousness. It's indeed reasonable to say the heicha, the ika, the shani. When there is consciousnness, when there is thought, when there's minds, it's different. Diktani, because we have Tani Sefer. We learn in the later part of the Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, Shnei achsoniyim oichlin al shulchan echad. Two guests can eat at the same table. Zeh oichel basar, v'zeh oichel gvina. This one eats meat, and this one eats cheese. And we're not worried they're going to share food and come to eat milk and cheese together. And so you see, when you have two minds, this one will say, hey, I'm eating meat, you're eating cheese. They'll stop each other. The consciousness would help them. The Gemara says, not so fast. Was it not said about this case? This halacha, that a person can eat meat and a person can eat cheese at the same table, different people, it's only if they do not recognize each other. There's no friendship between them. But if they know each other, then it's asur, because then they might come. So even though there is de'ot, if they're makirin, they can't. V'haninami, and here too, the nida and her husband, makirin ze'ezeh ninhu. They're like the two guests, but one's eating meat and one eats chicken, and they know each other. You can't do it. Same thing here. The husband and wife, they know each other, and what's it called? They should not be able to lay on the bed, even fully clothed. Haki hashno. And the Gemara says, is this a good proof? You're missing another factor here. Awesome. There, in the case of the guests who come to the hotel and they're both sitting at the same table, the whole issue there is they have minds, they have consciousness, they can stop each other. But shinui leka, there's no difference in the way they ate. Hacha, here, in the case of the married couple, ika deot, the ika shinui. There is consciousness, and there is a shinui. What is the shinui? Shinui means a deviation from the norm. What's a deviation from the norm? And that would be a reminder for them not to sin. The fact is that they're wearing clothing to bed. So in the Talmudical times, they did not really sleep in PJs, and they slept unclothed. In fact, there is an inyan, there is a idea that a person, when he's sleeping with his wife, he should be sleeping bikirov basar, with their flesh touching one another. Just give me 1 second, I'll bring up the Gemara that has this idea. Okay, the Gemara in Masechet Ksubas, Memches Amid Aleph. Shneimar, it says she'era kesuta ve'onata lo yigra. It's pasuk in Mishpatim. What is she'era? Says the Gemara, ze kiruv basar. This is the flesh being close to each other. And if a person says, if a man says, I cannot lay with my wife, she with his clothing and he with his clothing, only that's the only way. He has to give her a get and he has to pay the ketuvah because she'era, being close of the basar, is an important concept in Judaism as well as for many other ideas. So here, the fact that they're both clothed is a deviation of the normal practice. So you have consciousness and you have deviation of norm. So maybe it should be permissible for a husband and a wife who's in nida to lay fully clothed on a bed together. One second. Wait, I mixed up. Okay, no. So Ika de Amre, there are those who say the same discussion, but it ran a little differently in the understanding. Toshma, two guests eat in the same table. Zeb also says, we know this one meat and this one cheese. Itmar Allah was said on this. It's only if they're not recognizing one another. They know each other, then it's asur. Here too, the couple knows each other, so it should be asur. Whereas the hasam the ot ika shinui leka hacha iot ika de ot the ika shinui. There was no there was consciousness, but there was no change in the way they're eating, all eating from the same table. But in here, there's a change, there's consciousness and a deviation of the norm of how they would sleep. So maybe it would be permissible. So comes the Gemara and now says, Tashma lo yechal hazav im hazava mishum hergel aveda. A zav may not eat together with a zava since it may lead to sin. That was our Mishnah, right? If a couple who are also to be together may not eat together, then surely they may not sleep together. That's the Gemara wants to say. Whereas Hachinami, Diut Eka, Shinu Eka, no, the case of food again is different because they're eating regularly. So that's why it's not allowed. But here, where there's a change from the norm, maybe it should be allowed. So you come to its final proof. Tashmat. Come in here. It says in a pasuk in Yehezkel, El Heharim lo achal. Upon the mountains, he did not eat. This pasuk refers to someone so pious that he does not require the merits of his ancestors. Okay, the Heharim he doesn't eat, the Horim, the mountains, the patriarchs. Ve'enav lo nasa et gilulei bet Yisrael, and he did not lift to the idols of the family of Israel. Ve'et eshet re'ehu lo timeh, and he did not defile his neighbor's wife. Ve'el isha nida lo yikrad, and he did not come close to an isha nida. So now you have here in the comparison in the pasuk, you have about eshet re'ehu, a neighbor's wife, and then you have about isha nida, a wife who is nida. Ma'kish isha nida le'eshet re'ehu. The pasuk in Yechezkel is comparing a neighbor's wife to the nida wife itself. Everyone would say that a married woman and a strange man, even if they're fully clothed, should not be laying on one bed. That's totally wrong, right? So that's asur. Because of the issue of ihud. And even if the couple is not secluded, it would still be asur. So af ishto nida hu mevigdo vehi mevigda asur. So it compares it to the isha eshet re'eu, and now it says isha nida. The same thing, just like a eshet re'eu, the neighbor's wife, you're not allowed to lay with her even if she's fully clothed. So too, isha nida, you're not allowed to live with her even if she's fully clothed. Shema mina, it is a good proof. And upliga the Rabbi Padat. This agrees that Rabbi Padat. The Amar Rabbi Padat lo asat Torah elet kruva shel gilu arot b'lad. That the isur of kurva, of the Giloi Arayot of the Torah, is only actually b'ma'aseh, is when they're actually sleeping together as they're doing the action. Shenema ish ish el kol she'er b'saro lo tikrimu ligalot irva. Each man shall not approach any close relative to uncover the nakedness. The Pidas holds that the biblical prohibition applies only to cohabitation. Any other closeness, such as lying together without clothing, so when I say he holds, it's only rabbinic. Accordingly, if the couple are clothed, there are no grounds even for a rabbinic prohibition. Now, some say, if you take a look at note 28, Rishonim raises that following difficult with Rashi's approach. The Gemara above assumed that it's forbidden to lie together with another man's wife, even when clothed. Rashi himself explains that it's derived from the Yichud issue. How can Rav Pedat permit this activity of a man laying with his wife, who is a nidah, with the fully clothes on? So some explain the Gemara differently. And rather, Pedas speaks of a man's own wife when she's a nidah. It thus emerges the dispute between Pedas and Yosef concerns only a nidah. Pedas means that nidah and her husband are allowed to lie together while clothed, whereas Rav Yosef rules this is biblically prohibited. However, Chidushay Rein points out there's a problem with this, and so others want to learn. Tosfot wants to learn that the issue here is that Pedas does not allow for a man to lay with his nidah wife fully clothed. He doesn't allow it. What he's saying, he's arguing with. He's saying you're learning it from Yecheskel is incorrect. We don't learn from Sukkim and Yecheskel and Makish and stuff like that. Rather, the halacha is the same, but we don't learn it from that pasuk. Let me just see over here. 1 second. Chavches. Toysa says, "Let me establish a pedas cholak al mishnah sharma leichaz avazava." Vav sheim zekilar reiser ve'oid let me establish the repadas hektel shachar mishnah ishes ish b'mita achaz gam shu b'vigda v'vigda u'mela ein misha cholik bazeh. Sheyesh le'osar b'vigda v'vigda mishum shekarav l'kirav basar. Shekol shekein shasar b'ishes ish basar af b'yichud let me establish the cholak al kach the repadas. Achal hasavra sheyetzra tkufa v'uyachol l'cholik. He's arguing on the svara, on the thought process. Okay. Here, this is from the Ramban. The Padas is not arguing with what Rav Yosef said. Achshar ki was mutores kishen kshash bia. Ksheyesh chash bia iser. Ach be'erva shel eshes ish also tar kol kiver shloim. Right, in the Tosha Sarash, Kasher Ripadas Chalak Rak al Hadrosha me Haposik keeps me toy when el kiver shel gila rice. Ach min derabanon yitaken shavar sheasa. Okay, so at the end of the day, don't take this Ramban, Tosha Sarash. Tosfot itself, everyone seems to say Pedat is not arguing on the halacha. Obviously, a man is not allowed to lay on a bed with an eshet ish, even if they're fully clothed, and same asur to lay with his own wife fully clothed when she is in nidah, and that is also asur. Question is, where do you learn it from, and to what degree it is? So we're going to learn one more piece of Gemara, and then we're going to look at the halacha, and then we'll go back. Ula. So there is a practice of ula, which a lot of people use it as a big kula to permit certain things, but we're going to see what the Rambam says, and what the Ramban says we already saw, and how the halacha is negay l'maisa. Okay, let's take a look. Ula. Kihave ote nibeirav. When Ula would return from the study hall, have minashik lehu la'achvate abe hadayhu. So I'm just going to translate what it says. When Elul will come back from the base Medrash, he would kiss his sisters on their chest. And some say he kissed them on their hands. Now a sister is one of the arayot, right? You're not allowed to marry your sister. You're not allowed to have relations with your sister. And here he's coming, and he is kissing his sister. Ufliga dide adede. And Ramula is contradicting himself. The Amarula, afilu shum kurva asur. Any sort of closeness between a man and a woman is forbidden. You're not allowed to do anything. If it was shum kruva asur, even any type of closeness, not even the ma'aseh even anything else that brings them close, any type of affection. Mashum, as we say, lech lech, amri nizira. We say, go away, go away. We say to the nazir, sechor sechor, lechalma lo tikrav. Go around. Do not approach the vineyard, which is basically don't get involved in things that can lead to an isur. Okay, that can lead to an isur. So before we do anything else, we're now going to read the outside the Gemara. We're going to look now in the way that Ramban and the Shulchan Aruch bring down this halacha. Says the Rambam. I'm reading it now. If a man wants to either hug or kiss, these are again affectionate displays of affection, right? A woman who is an arayot to him, forbidden to ever get married and to have relations with, but he doesn't have any what's it called, drive to ever be with them in a sexual manner. He doesn't have that. Kigon achoso hagadola, his older sister, va'achot aviv, and his aunt, and similar relatives who usually doesn't bring a person to have bad thoughts. Okay, so apapi she'ein lo shum hana, and even he has no hana from this. There's no, sexual pleasure coming from this. Klal at all. It is terribly disgusting and terribly bad. The davar isserhu, and it's aser. Umaaseh tipshim, and it's the ways of the foolish. She'en korvim le'erva kilal. We do not come close to an erva at all. One exception, ben gedula, ben ketana, whether she is older or younger, says the Rambam. Chutz, the one exception, meha'av lebito, a father to his daughter, and this includes grandfather to granddaughter, umeha'em livana, and for a mother to a son, and this includes a grandmother to a grandson. So says the Rambam that any such a hug or kiss to any other relative, his lashon is it's disgusting, it's bad, terrible, it is aser, and it is maaseh tipshim. And the only exception would be father to daughter, grandfather to granddaughter, mother to son, and grandmother to granddaughter. They're the only ones who give kiss and hugs to the opposite gender. So we have to go back to Ula. Ula is kissing his sister. And in one version, he's kissing them on the chest. So what is going on over here? So let's take a look at the Tosfot. Tosfot on the bottom of the page. Vehu haya yodea ba'atzmo, says Tosfos, Ula knew by himself, shlo yava lidei hirhur. He would never come to any sort of hirhur, any sort of avera. Shitzadik amur haya. He was a complete tzaddik. Like it says in Perek Beis Tiksuvas, there was a rabbi of Ada Bar Ahava that markiv la achatefa umerked. And he put a kala, a bride on his shoulders, and he was dancing with her. So the rabbis asked him, "Can we also do this?" He said, if she is like a beam or an ox, or basically you don't see it as coming even close to an avera, then that would be permissible. So here, the Sport is giving the idea that these great tzaddikim, who had no hirhur, they would be able to have kissed or hug the opposite gender, or maybe even put them on the shoulders and dance with. So lahalacha, the Rambam says as follows: that first of all, they have now machloket Rambam and the Ramban. The Rambam holds lo tikrevu legalot erva. This pasuk that we've been seeing about, don't come close to uncover the nakedness of someone you're not allowed to be with. The Rambam says that it is an Isur D'Oraita. It's a Lo Ta'aseh. Person can get makot for that. It's an Isur D'Oraita to touch, what's it called? In an affectionate way, a member of the opposite female, the opposite gender, that is asur to be with, and it's an Isur D'Oraita. The Ramban argues that hugging and kissing is only an Isur D'Rabanan. Okay, this derech chiba is only an Isur D'Rabanan and not an Isur D'Oraita. However, the Shulchan Aruch rules with the Rambam that hugging and kissing is a Torah prohibition, and one receives makot for it. Okay, now, when does the Isur begin? According to many, it already starts at 3 years old. The girl's already 3. Right? That's what the Rambam said. Ben Gedolah, Ben Ketana. Now, is there an exception for a relative? So from what we've been seeing, the Rambam says, Meguna beyoter v'davar asur hu ma'aseh tipshim hu. Is there any sort of heter at all to allow this? Rav Moshe Feinstein suggests that why the Rambam is answering it so much is because he's worried that if a person who's not a tzaddik does this, he'll be makel here. He'll say, "Oh, this is my sister. I'll hug her." And then, I hugged her. I can hug another girl. So only the tzaddikim who are sure they're not going to lead to any further kulos, they allowed it. That's Rav Moshe. The Eitzer Poiskim cites the Batei Kuna that the fact that the Rambam said it is Ma'aseh Tipshim, it's Meguna Beyoter. So when he said Davar Isur, he didn't mean it literally, that it's a full Isur, but rather something inappropriate. And Menashe Klein in Mishnah Halachot also says this way. However, others say, no, he used the word Asur, and it means it's completely Asur. But Menashe Klein was asked about one who was attending his sister's wedding, and the sister expects a hug and a kiss. And if he refused, she would be extremely offended. So Klein explains the best way is to talk to her. But if she's not going to be convinced, he can hug or kiss her on the premise of kavod abriot. You have to give respect to another person. As since the act is not an actual isser, but strongly discouraged, the kavod abriot would override the concern in this case. Reb Moshe was brought to a situation where there was a shidduch, and a girl would hug her brother from time to time. And because of this, someone wanted to break off the shidduch with her. Right? She was hugging her brother. So Reb Moshe stated very harshly and clear, this is not a reason to break off the shidduch. Nevertheless, Reb Moshe did not approve the practice of a girl hugging her brother. And he said he can only think of a leniency if the person is very old and claims to receive no pleasure. But Rav Moshe stopped short of permitting this scenario as well. Rav Henkin in the Hakira suggests that we do not accept the psak of the Rambam, because he says, you take a look at the Rambam in the Pirush HaMishnayos, in the Rambam's Pirush HaMishnayot, he writes there, one is not permitted to kiss his own daughter. But in the Mishnah Torah that we just read, Rambam does permit it. So Rav Henkin uses the statement to suggest that we don't paskin like the Rambam. Rather, he accepts the Ramban's understanding of the Gemara about Ula. The Rambam writes that when it comes to one's own family, it's possible to rely on the fact that one has no inappropriate pleasure whatsoever. And the Rambam again holds that it is a dirabanan, and therefore the Ramban would be a little bit more makel to do this. So Rav Henkin adds that one can rely on this leniency only when there's no other option, and only if the interaction will happen rarely, once in a while. But having on a constant basis, one must refuse and explain in a firm but compassionate manner that he cannot engage in these actions. So it's possible to distinguish a one-time interaction and an interaction that will likely repeat itself over and over. It's better to have that one conversation in the beginning rather than to allow things to go on for years and then all of a sudden, this way, or that way, and people get upset. Okay. Okay. Fine. So that's a little bit on that topic and that halach. Okay. Now we come to another Gemara, and this is where a lot of the halachot come from. This is a story. Tanit v'Eliyahu. Maaseh b'Talmid echad. There was this one Talmid Chacham, Shana Harbe. He learned a lot of Mishnah. Kara Harbe. He learned a lot of Tanakh. V'Shimesh v'Chacham Harbe. And he learned a lot of Gemara. Umet b'Hatzi Yamav. And he died in half his years. Vayita ishto notel tefillin. And his wife took his tefillin. And she would go around from the houses of prayer and houses of study. And she said, the Torah is your life and it gives you long days. She went around screaming and yelling at all the shuls. My husband was so religious. He was such a big Talmid Chacham. He did so much. And the Torah promises long life, and he was killed half of his days. He's not alive anymore. And she said, why did he die? And no one can answer. So one time, Eliyahu Navi, right? Time of Eliyahu, some say Eliyahu is a Cholatov. Some say it's Eliyahu Navi, some say it's the Tananim Eliyahu. But anyway, so one time, one time, Eliyahu Navi visited her. And she said this whole story. By Martila. And Eliyahu Navi said to her, Bimi nedutech, ma hu etzlach. During the time of your nida, when you were a nida, how was your husband with you? Amrali, she said to me, Has v'shalom, afilu b'espaket no nagabi. He didn't even touch me on my little finger, right? Again, according to the Rambam, touching the wife during nidat is a isur d'oraita. Most poskim go with that psak. Isur d'oraita. So then he said, Bimei lubonech mahu etzlech. What about during your 7 clean days, right? What about the 7 clean days? How is he with you? She said, during the 7 clean days, achol imi. He ate with me. Mishasa imi. And he drank with me. Veyashan imi bikiruv basar. And he laid with me bikiruv basar, meaning our flesh to flesh was touching. We slept on the same bed without clothing. That's what it says here in the Gemara. But he never came to actually doing the maaseh. We just were close to each other. And I said to her, Baruch hamakom shehargo. Blessed is God who killed him. Because your husband did not show respect towards the Torah, or Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't, not hurt him because of his Torah, and Baruch Hashem, he gave him punishment. Sharei omra Torah ve'elisha v'nidat tumata lo tikrav. You cannot even come close to a woman when she is be'nidah. So since your husband, big Talmid Chacham, right, and he should have lived longer, but he was not careful with the harchakot. He ate and drank and slept with you on the same bed without clothing. Why? Of course, he deserved death. He also Ravdimi Omar. When Ravdimi came from Eretz Yisrael, he said, "Mita chadahave." They didn't actually sleep, so close, but it was on one bed, so it felt close. But Marava Omre in the West, Eretz Yisrael, they reported, Eretz Yosef, Sinar Mafsik Beno Levena. She was wearing underwear. She was wearing like a short skirt that kind of interposed between him and her in that area. And he never would have done the maaseh itself. Now, Tosfot and a lot of people are asking, a lot of folks are asking, this guy's just huge Talmid Chacham. Why would he even think that it would be okay for him to be with his wife during the 7 clean days? When a woman becomes a nidah, until she goes to the mikvah, she remains a nidah. So what was he thinking? Even if she came in nidah today, right? Let's say she had a menstrual cycle today, and she doesn't go to the mikvah for 20 years. For 20 years, she is remaining in nidah. Even if she has menopause and she's no longer having any flow, no, once you become nidah, you have to go to the mikvah. If you go to the mikvah, you remain in nidah. So what was he thinking? What is this? So says Rabbeinu Tam. This is in the top Tosfos on the right, about 2, 4, 6, 7 lines down. Rabbeinu Tam Pirish. You have to understand the day, the times in the day. Sheyuragilim litvol shtei tivilot. Achat lasof shiva l'reata she Torah midoraita. Bahach tefila. Ba'achat lasof yemei libun lechach hi haya mekil oto ha'ish. Says Tosfot, in those days they toveled twice. On a biblical level, on a Doraita level, a woman became an Ida after 7 days, as long as she's not bleeding. She can go to mikvah and she's completely tahor on a biblical level. Later on, the ladies took upon themselves, and the Chachamim were then gozer it, that they should wait the 7 clean days, just like a Zavah Gedolah. So during this time of this story happened, it was the minhag that people would go to the mikvah after 7 days after becoming an Ida. Because on a biblical level, you're now tahor. And then they would go to a second mikvah after the 7 clean days. So this guy thought, listen, on a biblical level, she's no longer tameh. You're right, we're not going to do anything until they have 7 clean days. But on a biblical level, she's already tahor, she went to the mikvah. And therefore, he took the liberty and slept with her with close flesh on the same bed or whatever. And that was his mistake. That's how he came to that mistake. Now here it talked about eating and drinking and laying on the same bed. If you continue in the Tosfos, the Rasha Yenoig Isler Lahoshet Miftach Miyada Leyada Bimei Nidusa. Rashi had this minhag that you cannot pass things from one hand to the other hand. Venerally, and the Ri has Sheyesh Samach Meseder Eliyahu, because in Tanakh Eliyahu it says Eliyahu Navi actually asked her, Diktani Amrla, Shema Heveta Lo Et Hashemen, Shema Heveta Lo Et Hapach. Umihu Hatam Misayim Benaga Bech Be'etzva Katana, and maybe he touched you while they were passing. So in the Tanakh Eliyahu, it's safe about passing. So that's where we get the hachaka of not passing. So we actually have the Tanakh Eliyahu today, and it does not have that lashon that it says in Tosafot when he's bringing the Seder Eliyahu. But let's read what it says over here. Maybe you gave him a knife in your hand and he touched you even on the little finger. So she said, Rabbi, I swear to your life. I washed his feet. And I poured him oil. And we slept on one bed. My clothing, his clothing. But we never came to do actual relations. So in our time, it goes with shot that they were actually clothed, and that she did everything for him. She washed him, she anointed him. They slept on one bed, but with clothing on, and this is the problem. So here it says evil etzva katan is a physical contact, even a small amount, and those are where the dinim of harchakot are learned from. This is the main source. This Gemara and the Taneh Devei Eliyahu that teaches us the majority of the harchakot are from here. Well, I'll just end off with an idea on Shalom Bayit that I think is important. Is that some people, they think, okay, she's an Ida, Asur, Hachakot, and they distance themselves legamre from their wife. That's probably not a very good idea, and that's probably not what was intended by the Chachamim and the Mechachakot. Obviously, during that time, there still has to be a warmness, and there still has to be a husband and wife relationship. The Gemara says the point of it is to rejuvenate. When a person has too much of one thing, they take it for granted. So there's that renewal process. And during that time, a person should show affection in less intimate ways, right? You can still say, "Wow, you look very nice. Oh, you did an amazing job on the dinner." Compliments like that. Obviously, you have to make sure the compliments don't lead to kalot rosh, lightheadedness, where people will now be stumbling about. Person can give a gift during that time. Obviously, you cannot pass it straight to her hand, but you can give a gift for her. You can get her flowers during that time and stuff like that. So there are ways to show affection without, without going into restricted areas. But I don't think that I don't think for a second that Chachamim meant for us to completely, throw her in the back and say I have nothing to do with you or anything like that. But rather to make the proper restrictions. You have to keep the Torah. You have to do it the right way, and everyone should have a tzlacha in finding that balance correctly. Okay. I want to go like tomorrow.